You see, at some point, every bad idea stops pretending to be serious. It was over typeface, a font. We have now arrived at the point where letters are political, is fear, wearing the costume, the principle. Hey everyone, welcome back to Justice ReDesigned. I'm Steve Teske, retired judge and your host. Now, this is episode 4, and in our series exploring the contours of diversity, equity, and inclusion, also called DEI, and the good and not so good about DEI. And we're going to look at what works and what doesn't work, and explore if the administration's absolute ban on DEI is justified. Now, this episode is called Neutrality of Theater. The last episode was the myth of neutrality. And we're going to continue this conversation of that term neutral and what it really means within the context of discrimination. Now, after all, discrimination is still against the law, and Title VII of the Discrimination Act must be enforced. You know, the law that says that discrimination on the basis of race, ethnicity, gender, sex, and religion is unlawful. So let's jump into neutrality, but from a different perspective. You see, at some point, every bad idea stops pretending to be serious. That moment has arrived, I think, for the anti-DEI movement with some things that have been going on. What began, at least rhetorically, as a legal argument about admissions policy in colleges has now mutated into something else entirely, a form of ideological performance art where the word neutrality is invoked to justify censorship, erasure, and increasingly absurd micromanagement of public life. This is no longer about law. It's about control dressed up as restraint. And when a movement reaches the point where it is banning fonts, scrubbing gift shops, disciplining federal employees for small flags, and litigating to preserve Confederate symbols in schools, it has run out of principle. Neutrality has become theater, and the curtain is coming down. So let's talk about when neutrality becomes petty. Let's start with the moment that should have ended the debate, if anyone were paying attention, that is. In 2025, the Secretary of State's office found itself in controversy. It wasn't over foreign policy, wasn't over national security. Get this. It was over typeface, a font, chosen for accessibility in the first place, but was suddenly deemed suspect because someone decided it signaled diversity because it was chosen for accessibility. Now, I want you to let that sink in. We have now arrived at the point where letters are political. This is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when ideology loses contact with substance. When you no longer have evidence, doctrine, or outcomes on your side, you stop arguing policy and you start policing symbols. You don't defend exclusion on the merits, you just simply attack aesthetics. This is not neutrality. It is symbolic authoritarianism. When a government starts regulating fonts, it's not protecting fairness. It's advertising insecurity. And I'm talking about their insecurity. Now, let's turn to memory policing. Now available in the gift shop, by the way. The same impulse starts up in places that once seemed immune to culture war theater, okay? Like national parks. In multiple states, parks have been ordered to remove books, souvenirs, and educational materials that allegedly promote DEI from gift shops. Think about that. We're now purging ideas, not from classrooms, but from postcards and pamphlets. Apparently, history is acceptable only if it fits neatly between a snow globe and a refrigerator magnet. That's not neutrality. It is state-mandated amnesia. When the government decides which versions of history may be sold alongside maps and mugs, it is no longer neutral. It is curating memory. And curated memory is not education. It's propaganda with better packaging. Now, let's take a look at the Confederate nostalgia, rebranded as fairness. The same sleight of hand appears in lawsuits over Confederate school names. The argument is not that these names are educationally valuable. It is that changing them would be unfair. Well, fair to whom? To black children forced to attend schools named after men who fought to keep their ancestors enslaved? Come on. Or to those who find comfort in symbols precisely because they exclude. Their ancestors excluded them. Calling this neutrality is like calling a monument to exclusion heritage. It only works if you refuse to ask whose heritage is being honored, right? And whose is being erased. Neutrality here does not preserve history. It selects it. Now let's talk about the FBI, a pride flag, and enforced quiet. Now, if this still feels abstract, consider the lawsuit brought by a longtime FBI employee. 16 years of service, near completion of special agent training. He alleges he was fired, not for misconduct, not for performance, but for displaying a small pride flag at his workspace. A flag, by the way, ironically, that had previously flown outside an FBI field office with supervisory approval. Folks, this doesn't get hot. This is what the corporate chill looks like when it enters government. Visibility itself becomes suspect. Expression becomes provocation. Silence becomes the only safe posture. Neutrality, once again, is not even-handed. It is enforced quiet. So let's take a look when the culture war reaches the U.S. Mint. That's right, the Treasury. And then there's the U.S. Mint. And one of the more surreal developments of this era, the war on wokeness, reached, get this, coin design. Advisory committees focused on historical accuracy were sidelined. Designs reflecting a fuller national story were attacked as ideological. Even currency, literal, tender, was not immune. And at this point, the pattern is unmistakable. When a movement cannot tolerate diversity in classrooms, workplaces, gift shops, fonts, flags, or coins, it's not defending neutrality. It is defending fragility, their fragility. So who's really woke? Let me pause here for just a moment, since I asked that I thought would be a rhetorical question, who's really woke? Because I've been called woke for arguing that schools shouldn't be named after men who fought a war to preserve slavery. Apparently, that makes me radical. But here's what fascinates me. The same people who accuse me of being woke are currently scrubbing exhibits from national parks, pulling items from gift shops, editing historical language, policing fonts, threatening funding, auditing museums. And I'm the activist? Let me get this straight, okay? Removing the name of a Confederate general from a public school, that's ideological extremism. But removing exhibits about slavery from a national park, that's neutrality? Oh, okay. Well, I see. So we're not against cultural intervention. We're just against the wrong kind of cultural intervention. Yeah, I see. You think about it for a moment. When I argue that Confederate monuments belong in museums instead of on pedestals, I'm not asking to erase history. I'm asking just to reclassify it. History in a museum says, this happened, let's understand. A monument on a school says, this deserves honor. Folks, those are not the same thing. Look, if you can't tell the difference between contextualizing history and glorifying it, that's not my wokeness. That's your confusion. And here's the punchline. The very people who mock woke culture are engaging in the most aggressive form of cultural editing we've seen in years. They just don't call it woke. They call it restoring tradition, or they call it protecting neutrality, or they call it defending fairness. Come on, folks. Let's not lie to ourselves. Functionally, it's activism. It's intervention. It's value enforcement. The only difference is whose values are being protected. You see, my version of woke says this: let's stop honoring systems built on human bondage. Their version says, let's stop talking about systems built on human bondage. One reduces harm. That would be mine. But the other, it reduces discomfort. Their discomfort. And those are not the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. If being awake means recognizing that public symbols communicate who belongs and who is valued, then fine, call me awake. But don't tell me scrubbing exhibits and censoring context is neutrality. That's not neutrality. That's theater. And the masks are starting to slip. Now, don't take it just from me. After Trump issued a statement claiming that the Smithsonian Museum was woke, and he put it in caps, and that the Smithsonian was out of control, and he complained that the Smithsonian discussed how bad slavery was and that we shouldn't allow this to happen, means only one thing, folks: that we should remove all mentions of slavery. In other words, we need to whitewash history. Now, I want you to listen to these people as they were leaving the Museum of African American History and Culture at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And this is after they have just read Trump's announcement that I just described about wokeness. And please pay attention that this disappointment that you're about to witness in this very short clip, in what he said, is coming from a diverse audience: black and white people, man and woman. Please indulge me. Watch this clip. It's not long, just enough to appreciate that most Americans do not agree with the Trump administration's opinion on his interpretation of wokeness on slavery. In fact, I'm not sure if he believes it, because there is a 2017 video of him at this same museum in his first presidency speaking glowingly of his exhibit, and that he was in awe of what he saw, that it should be a reminder that we should never go back. Kind of sounding woke there, Mr. Trump. So what changed? I think he might have some really racist or very stupid advisors. Now, just take a moment, watch it. This is short.
Huh? You saying it right?
He dead serious too.
He's literally.
It's caps.
I don't think I can comment without cussing. It's just horrible.
I'm very, because I can read. Yeah, I can read, but this don't look. I have to keep rereading it because this isn't a joke.
It's beyond disappointing. It's depressing. But to have the President of the United States saying something like this, it's just unconscionable.
It's not a shocker, to be honest with you. I didn't know he had like that much hate towards us though, or even like our history. It's kind of messed up.
I don't think people who approved of Trump even thought that he was even going to do anything like this.
I mean, this is one of the greatest things about DC is the museums. I mean, woke, what does that mean? Like, slavery didn't exist? Like, I don't get it.
He don't want people to see the true colors. Talking about we woke, saying woke is broke. Why is it?
Rather than woke, the museum this afternoon has been absolutely educational in ways that I just simply have never understood before. So for me, it was in cultural enlightenment and humanitarian enlightenment. Very important kind of institution as far as I'm concerned.
Did he ever actually visit the museum, or did he actually ever like come look inside? I don't know.
Send his
That's
colleagues to go
crazy.
check it out.
Yeah, Trump, come check out our museum, and then.
Somebody like the president should be dragged into this museum and forced to spend an hour every day just looking to see.
I just left from the museum, and I feel like most of the exhibits within it are showing kind of the past, and it might not be pretty and it might not be what people want to know, but they have to know so that we don't go back to where we once were.
Museums are about the truth and history, and that's why they exist, and that's why we go, and that's how we learn and how our children learn.
Okay. Let's close on this absurd end game. Put all of this together, and the end game becomes clear. This is not color blindness. It is context blindness. It does not elevate standards. It lowers competence. It does not unify. It polices. And it does not stop at law. It moves from law to culture to language, from language to memory, until neutrality becomes indistinguishable from erasure. This is not conservatism, ladies and gentlemen. It is administrative pettiness backed by state power. So, when neutrality collapses into performance, absurdity is never far behind. We start by banning offices, then language, then fonts, then books, then symbols, and eventually we begin pretending the honoring the Confederacy is merely preserving history. But there is a difference between remembering history and resurrecting it. There's a difference between teaching history and parading it. And when symbols of subjugation are restored not for education but for defiance, when they are placed in front of children whose ancestors suffered under them, we are no longer talking about neutrality or heritage or debate. We are talking about humiliation. And that is where we are headed next. Let me just close on these words. I ask you to think about it. Dwell on it. It's this. Neutrality that cannot tolerate history is not neutrality at all. It is fear, wearing the costume of principle. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate each of you taking the time to be here. I wish each of you, to be safe. Please take care. And I'll see you the next time.